Hello and welcome to Joy-Con Cast Episode 7. I'm your host Nicholas, and this week we are talking all new hardware from Nintendo. So there are some rumors and speculation and articles going on about a potential Nintendo Switch revision. We're going to talk about that, as well as talk about a potential Nintendo phone. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I really do want to talk about a Nintendo Switch revision. And the biggest reason is because I wonder, especially with the nature of the Switch, it's important to see how Nintendo handles it and to see what they decide to do with a revision. Because it's very simple with like the PS4 and Xbox. Microsoft and Sony had a very simple approach of making them more powerful, having them be 4K, having them be outputting a better resolution, better looking graphics, all that. But the Switch has no focus at all on power. It has no focus at all on making this games looking good by any means. It's focused on being a hybrid console, a console that you can take with you, or a handheld that you can dock and play like a normal console. And so it's important to see how Nintendo would handle a revision, because I think right now the Switch as it is, the 2017 model, the day one Nintendo Switch that we have, I think it's borderline perfect. And hear me out. Obviously, there are issues with it. I'm not saying that it's perfect as a product, but as a vision, as an experience, it does exactly what it needs to. It's a console that gets console games that can be played portably. It's very simple and easy to dock it. It's very simple and easy to travel with it. I think it's a great size. I think the controls feel great. I love the Joy-Con. I do agree that, yeah, there are some issues with it. I wish it had Bluetooth support for wireless headphones. I wish there was less bezel and maybe more screen. I think battery life, honestly, is fine, but it could always be improved. But those are very simple. I mean, that's nitpicking at that point. That's nitpicking. That's all. That's all nitpicking. I think the Switch, as far as a portable console or a hybrid handheld or whatever, the experience is perfect and it's fine and it's great. And obviously every product, especially with technology, yeah, they all have their issues. They all have problems. They all have things that could be improved upon. But I think as an experience and for what the Switch offers, like I said, that is perfect. I don't see any way that Nintendo can make it better as a sense, or better in a sense. The Switch in itself, obviously as a product, yeah, it could be improved. But there's a lot of how do I word this? There's a lot of sacrifices that Nintendo had to make for the Switch to be an affordable price, to be a small form factor, and I don't see it ever. I mean, I won't see it ever outputting to like 4K or having maybe like inside specs. Yeah, those would definitely be upgraded. But Nintendo, I don't think, especially right now, care about more power. And I think they'll do kind of, not in a bad way, but bottom of the barrel, what they need to do to get more third-party support on board. And as far as what I would like from a new Nintendo Switch, is, like I said earlier, like wireless headphones. I'd love to use my AirPods with my Switch. Less bezel, more screen. I think that would be beautiful. I think that would be nice. And powerful enough as to where when games get announced for Switch, I don't have to worry about what they'll look like. That's my biggest concern. Because we have games like Mortal Kombat 11, which, by the way, we will talk about this later on. Mortal Kombat 11 was playable well, I guess we'll talk about it now. Mortal Kombat 11 was playable at PAX East on Nintendo Switch, And from what I've heard was good things about it, that it looked good. It was locked at 60 FPS, but there's no gameplay on the internet. I could not find anything anywhere. Doom Eternal is coming to Nintendo Switch. Wolfenstein, I think Youngblood is coming to Nintendo Switch. And that's exciting that all these games are coming to Switch. But I also fear what they'll look like. You know, will they look muddy? Will they look washed out? Will they not run at this frame rate? Like, if the Switch was powerful enough as to where I knew, okay, the games could be 720p, 30 FPS, and look this good, I would be ecstatic. Obviously, I don't expect Switch to ever, at least not for a while, be like a portable PS4. That's just wishful thinking. That would be hard to do, to cram that much power into a small handheld and not experience overheating or technical problems. But honestly, outside of like a couple things with battery, screen, and performance, there really isn't anything that I could imagine Nintendo doing to make the Switch better. I could see, as far as like a new Nintendo Switch Pro, I can't really see anything. Maybe they have a Switch Pro that's more focused on the console side of things, and the dock outputs at a higher resolution. It has more stable frame rate, stuff like that. Sure, okay, I could see that. But I can't really see anything being done in terms of the performance. What I could see and what I would like to see is a Switch Mini. And this, I think, is more realistic. I think Nintendo making a cheaper Switch that focuses more so on the handheld side of things, that is more of a successor to the 3DS, I think would be a smart way to go. I'm actually going to look up right now. I'm looking up the new Nintendo 3DS. I know this is like the top of the line. The new Nintendo 3DS is $200, which isn't that bad. It's only $100 off from the Switch. But if they could make a Switch at $200, have it replace the new Nintendo 3DS XL, maybe it'll ship with the Joy-Cons attached to the Switch and they can't be removed. Maybe it doesn't come with a dock. Maybe, you know, there's certain limitations with the power or stuff like that. But as long as it got all the same first and third party support, as long as it had, you know, the same library, same support, same, you know, same everything like that, I think that would be a great successor to the 3DS. And I think that makes more sense than a Switch Pro. Because, I mean, I don't think $300 is a lot at all. I mean, I think the PlayStation 4 and I know the PS4 Slim is $300. I think the Xbox One S is also like $300. So I mean, a console in that territory isn't bad, and I think especially for the experience that Switch offers, it's a very unique experience that no one else is really doing. So I think a Mini would be a better idea than a Pro, because I mean, I understand some people want games to look better on Switch, and I completely understand. Obviously, I don't want games to look worse, but I don't know, man. I think a Switch Mini is a much better idea. Have it be $100 cheaper than the Switch. Have it come as a smaller form factor, with the Joy-Cons non-removable. Don't ship with a dock. You know, save price on that. and have it be more of a successor to the 3DS. Then, when the time comes, I'm sure the Switch Mini would be more so focused on handheld experiences. The one thing that I'd be unsure about, would the Switch Mini work with a dock or any current Switch accessory on that matter? I don't think that I don't know. I don't think that the Switch branding or the Switch name would get in the way of having the Switch Mini be what it's supposed to be. And by that, I mean if the Switch Mini doesn't end up working with a dock and it can't switch, that's fine. Nintendo's released consoles in the past. I mean, look at the 2DS. I mean, it's technically a 3DS without the 2D. And even a lot of 3DS games nowadays don't have that 3D feature anymore. So I don't think Nintendo's as caught up with the name and the gimmick of it. I think if they were ever to do a Switch Mini, they would do what makes sense, make it smaller, and make it more focused on portable play. But my question is, would it work with the dock? Would it work with current Switch accessories? That I don't know. That I'm unsure about. I mean, obviously, I would assume that it could work with other Joy-Con, Pro controllers, etc. But I think if it doesn't end up working with a dock, and you buy this for a child, and they grow up and they realize, oh, I want an actual Switch, then at that point, you can buy the $300 Nintendo Switch that we have now. And I think that would make sense, having two SKUs, having one be a Switch Mini, one being what we have now. I think that makes sense. And I don't know if I've said this in the past, but the really great thing about the Switch is that, and this is something they did with the 3DS as well, they could have a whole shelf filled with different Switch SKUs. And not just colors or limited editions or special versions or anything like that. They could have a Switch Mini, which focuses more so on the handheld portable side of it. They could have a Nintendo Switch, what we have now, which does both console and handheld play. They could have a Switch Pro, which is more so featuring the console side of things. And I'm interested to see what Nintendo does moving forward. Will they have a whole shelf filled with different SKUs for different people? Or will they take what we currently have, rock out with that, and then just upgrade that in the future and make that a more prominent product? Now, a lot of people have been pointing this out on the internet. Earlier this year, I think it was in January, I forgot who said this. Let me see. I don't know if I forgot who said this, but earlier this year, someone was interviewing someone from Nintendo. I think it might have been Reggie, and he said that right now they were planning. They were focused on the current gray and neon Nintendo Switch SKUs. They were focused on that and selling those systems at the price, and basically they had no intentions of revising hardware or anything like that. And a lot of people have been pointing at that and saying that's the reason we will never, or that we won't see a new Switch. Huh? You have to keep in mind that's an interview, not a Nintendo Direct, not E3, not their own YouTube channel. They're not going to sit and announce that, yeah, we have a new Switch in the works. We're working on it right now. They're not going to say that in an interview. They're not going to say that in the middle of the week. No. Even if Nintendo is, which I'm pretty sure they are working on new hardware in the background, they're not going to sit there and admit that. At that point, no one is going to buy the current Switch because they know that something better is on the horizon. It would make no sense at all in any situation to sit there and say that, yes, they are working on new hardware. No reason at all. So I don't think that's a good reason to not believe in to not believe a new Switch is coming. We hear this rumor all the time. I mean, there's always rumors of new Nintendo Switch hardware coming out. But I don't think that's a good reason because it's an interview. Of course, Reggie's not going to say, yeah, we have new hardware on its way out the doors this summer. No. The current Switch wouldn't sell. The current games wouldn't sell. Nintendo wouldn't be able to carry the weight of the company without the Switch selling at that point. So I don't know. That isn't a good reason to not believe it. Of course, they're not going to announce it during an interview. They're going to wait for E3 or their very own Nintendo Direct or whatever. But either way, in regards to new Nintendo Switch, there are rumors that there are two. That there are two systems. A enhanced Pro version and a mini one. And we kind of talked about the mini one. And like I said, I think this is... I think this would be a much better option. Again, as long as it gets the same games as the normal Switch, the same support, the same everything, I think having a... And I think even some people would probably buy a Switch Mini alongside the current Switch because I don't mind the current size of the Switch. It's definitely not as convenient or portable as a 3DS. When you're playing it, it feels so good to play. Like, the screen is big, it's bright, it looks good. I kind of forget of how hard it is to carry along with me because it is kind of a big portable. But I think some people would like having a mini Switch alongside the normal Switch. That could be more portable. And, one Switch would sit in the dock all day. The other is what you take with you on the go. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the Switch, which is that you don't need two hardware. You don't need two products to do the same thing. You just have one Switch. But I don't think that's a bad idea. What I do want to talk about is that Switch Pro and what we could see from a potential Switch Pro, because like I said, like Nintendo doesn't really, not in a bad way, but I don't think their focus is on hardware, power, performance. That's not really what their focus is. So I would be more than fine with as far as like the chip, I think it's the NVIDIA Tegra 1X or X1 or something like that. Which I know even now is like a few years old, and I think even when it was released, it was a few years old. I'm not too caught up on graphics cards and what chips they could use. I really don't know, but I can't imagine that it would be that drastic of a change as far as the processing power would be, because the same games have to run on both systems. So you can't have one Switch on this NVIDIA Tegra chip and then this Switch on, a completely different, running a completely different chip. You know what I mean? So they have to have the same type of compatibility. So I don't know how much of a difference the chip would be and the processing would be. I mean, obviously it would have to be enough, like better enough to warrant selling a revised or enhanced Switch. But that's that. As far as 4K, I can't see 4K. I know the current Switch has a 720p screen, like the actual Switch has a 720p screen. I would like it to be a 1080p screen. I think that would look nice. Shrink the bezels, actually increase the screen size, have it be 1080p. And if this is a Switch Pro, have it have a special dock that maybe, I don't know if I could see 4K, but I don't know. I don't know if 4K is like, I don't know how much it takes to output 4K. I don't know. I'm not a computer guy. I'm not a tech guy. I don't know. But I'm imagining that if Nintendo does make a more advanced Switch, they make a more advanced dock, and they could potentially make it happen. I don't know. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think having the screen be 1080p or slightly better than 1080, or have it be better than 720p, I think that's realistic. As far as the output to the TV, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not sure if 4K is a possibility. I don't know if that's something Nintendo even really cares about. It would be really cool to see, and it'd be cool to play games on Switch in 4K. And you'd have to imagine, too, that even right now, the Switch is going up against PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, and those are powerful consoles. They output to 4K. They run all the latest third-party games. Nintendo, I mean, they've obviously gone a different route this generation, and they always do. Every generation, Nintendo does something different. But I would like, for at least this generation, to see Nintendo on par with PS4 and Xbox. And I don't necessarily mean in terms of graphics or power, but just on par with hardware. And I think if the Switch does end up outputting 4K, that would be amazing. Because, I mean, the PS5 or the Xbox Scarlet, whatever they end up being called, these are probably going to be, I don't know how much you can change from the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. I think those are still mighty fine pieces of hardware, but those are probably going to wash the Nintendo Switch. They're going to, in terms of performance, power, and all that, they're going to destroy what the Switch can offer. I mean, the Switch is barely keeping up with third-party support, and now the PS and the Xbox are about to get better. I think Nintendo does need to start taking a step back, taking some notes, and start playing catch up with the other consoles. And even though I don't necessarily view the Switch as a competitor to those consoles, at the end of the day, I do think that the Switch needs to be on par with PS5 and the Xbox Scarlet, whatever they end up being called. And having 4K would be huge. Having enough performance power to warrant more third-party support would be huge. And I know it's easier said than done, but if Nintendo does do a Switch revision, as much as I think a Switch Mini would be better for those upgrading from a 3DS, I think a Switch Pro or a Switch Enhanced or whatever would make more people inclined to buy into a Nintendo Switch. Or for those who already have a Switch, they may think of upgrading. So I'm rooting for a Switch Mini. I think that makes sense. But if they do a Switch Pro, they have to do a Switch Pro. They have to do an enhanced. They have to have it be a 1080p screen. Output at 4K. Have better frame rate. Have more RAM. Have more onboard storage. Have more third-party support. Have a better chip. They need to focus on that stuff and go in on that stuff, because that's what's going to go up against the PlayStation and the Xbox. And I think the Switch will be more successful in the end because of that. And again, whether the Switch Pro with all of this enhanced tech, whether that focuses more so on console play rather than portable, I mean, would Nintendo do, I guess at that point, would it make sense if Nintendo did a Switch that was only focused on console play? I mean, I guess you would still have the normal Switch that we have now. But I was going to say, because, I mean, I could see Nintendo having a Switch Mini, and it's focused on handheld portable play. Having a Nintendo Switch, which is focused on handheld and console play, and then having a Nintendo Switch Pro, which is more focused on console, having it be docked and playing on a TV and all that. And I'm not saying that Nintendo can't release a Mini and Pro and have them focus on handheld and console features, and also have them do the other. But I don't know. This is what I'm talking about. It's like the idea of a new Switch is so interesting because like right now the Switch does such a very specific thing that how do you, I don't know. I don't think that can necessarily, like that experience, obviously having a better screen, battery life, onboard storage, yada, yada, yada. Obviously that can always be improved, but like if they do a Switch Mini or a Switch Pro and they're more so focused on one style of play over the other, does that matter? I'm sure there are people out there who have a Switch right now who only use it in handheld. I'm sure there are people out there right now who have a Nintendo Switch who only focus on playing it as a console. So maybe Nintendo releasing a Switch that focuses more on that style of play that people enjoy, they would gravitate towards that Switch model. And for those of us who want the best of both worlds, we buy the current Switch. I think that makes sense. I think that's I think that makes sense. As far as like pricing goes, that too would be I mean $200 for Switch Mini. And then for another $100 you get the Switch. Then would they do another $100 you get the Switch Pro at $400? 2, 3. I mean, I don't know about that pricing. $2, $3, and $400. And if they were to release a Switch Pro, would they knock down the current price of the Switch? I don't know, actually. Because I don't think they make the Switch Mini like... I don't know if they make it... It's definitely not going lower than $150. Like, I could see $150, but that's half of the current Switch price. But then if they made the Switch Pro $450, I think that's... Is that too much for a Nintendo Switch? When at that point, even though it's a Pro and enhanced Switch, for that price, you could get a PS4 or an Xbox. Games would look better. They're always release day and date. They have higher frame rate. They have a better online service. I mean, you're missing out on the hybrid experience. You're missing out on those Nintendo exclusives. That's where it's kind of like a, that's kind of where, I forgot what I was just about to say. That's kind of like the one problem right now is that, like, where would they fall into line as far as pricing goes? Because I think a Switch, like I said, for a Switch Mini for like $200, have it replace 3DS, having the current Switch stay at $300, and then maybe a new Switch at that $400. I don't know. I mean, I guess that... But then if you look at it, like, if you want the Nintendo Switch, why not just spend that extra $100 and get a much better, more enhanced system? But then again, if you get the Switch Mini, why not spend that extra $100 and get a more well-built system for both console and handheld play? So I think right there's, like, I have no problem believing new Switch hardware. My only concern is pricing and what would make them all different from one another. For me personally, I don't think there's anything Nintendo can do to get me to buy into a new Nintendo Switch, especially since it's crazy to think it's already been 2 years? 2 years ago I just bought my current Switch, and it's still kicking. I mean, it's still doing everything that I envisioned it would do. Battery life is fine. The games are fantastic. The experience is flawless. I've had no problems with my dock. I think the Switch as a whole, it hasn't slowed down. It's held up really well. I don't drop my Switch or any of my electronics, as a matter of fact, so it looks like it's in very good condition. I love my Switch the way it is. It's fine. I think it's great. And yeah, there are, I think, like I said earlier, like nitpicky things that Nintendo can improve upon. 32 gigabytes of onboard storage is pretty laughable. And even if you're not going all digital, a lot of games require you to download a big chunk of the game onto the actual system. A lot of games have updates. You kind of need an SD card, even if you're not going all digital. I think having at least 120 gigabytes is better. I think that's... I don't know. I can't imagine storage is that expensive, though. Again, I don't know. I don't know the insides. I don't know what it's like to make a game console, so I don't know. And like I said earlier, Nintendo obviously had to cut corners and make some sacrifices, but 32 gigabytes is pretty laughable. I think right now I have a 400 or 500 gigabyte in my Switch. A 500 gigabyte SD card in my Switch. I'm all digital with it, so I have space for days. And obviously games don't take up as much space on Switch as they do other consoles. But still, for a console that's, in the same generation as PS4 and Xbox that have at least 500 gigabytes, up to a terabyte now, 32 gigabytes is pretty laughable. It's very laughable for a console. There are phones that don't even ship with less than 64 gigabytes of storage. And for being a console that has to download big games, 32 gigabytes is just not cutting it. The battery life could obviously be improved. I think it's fine personally. I don't think I've ever had a problem with my Switch and its battery life, but like I said, nitpicky things like that could definitely be improved. I'm very interested in seeing what Nintendo does. And I think it's a very interesting concept. The idea of a new Nintendo Switch. For me personally, like I said, if Nintendo released a Switch that could run like Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Doom Eternal, Mortal Kombat, and we didn't have to worry about how they performed, or we knew the bare minimums of what it would look like, I would probably upgrade to. If we got more third-party support, if we could get Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Origins or Odyssey, whatever it was, natively on Switch, not anything we have to stream over the cloud, something we can go to the eShop and download and buy, that I would probably upgrade to if the price was right. I would probably trade in or sell my current Switch and buy that enhanced Switch if that was the case. But then again, I also already have a PS4. I have a more than capable PC that can play those games. But I love my Switch, and I love playing it on the go, and I love the hybrid nature of it, and that's what attracts me towards the Switch. I buy every game on Switch these days. Mortal Kombat 11, I'm downloading on Switch. Doom, I'm getting on Switch. There's a ton of games that's escaping my mind right now, but any game that comes out, if it's on Switch, I'm buying it on Switch. I'm not going to bother with the PS4. I'm not going to go through Steam. I'm going to get it on Switch because I love that hybrid nature. So if we got a more enhanced Switch that allowed for even more third-party support, that's the only way that I could But then again, I wouldn't want the current Switch to not get those titles. That is another thing that I wanted to talk about. I don't want the Switch Pro to come out and get all these good-looking third-party games and have the current Switch not receive any of those. That's what I don't want. Because the same thing happened with the new Nintendo 3DS. When that was released, there were a couple games. I know Xenoblade, I think it was it Fire Emblem Warriors? Those were only available on the new Nintendo 3DS. I think there's one other game that I'm missing. SNES games were only available on new Nintendo 3DS. There were a couple other like eShop titles that were only on the new Nintendo 3DS. And the original kinda got left in the dark with a couple with a couple games. I don't want that to be the case with this Switch. So if a Switch Pro does come out and it ends up getting Resident Evil 2 Remake or something like that, I want the current Switch to get it as well. The Switch is only 2 years old now. There's no reason why games should stop coming to the system just because a more powerful one is out there, especially when that new powerful console is in the same family as the other console. If PS4 Slim, and PS4 Pro can all get the same games, if Xbox One, Xbox One S, and Xbox One X can all get the same games, there's no reason why Switch Mini, Switch, and Switch Pro can't get the same games as well. So if we do end up getting this new powerful hardware, I would love for it to be an opportunity for games to look better, perform better, and I'd love it to be an opportunity for other companies to jump on board and start releasing their games on Switch. But I don't want the current Switch to be left in the dark when it comes to that third-party support. So with that said, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about as far as the Nintendo Switch revisions. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about in regards to the Nintendo Switch revisions. Obviously, Wall Street Journal put up an article describing all of this. Whether it's true or not, they said that it's due this summer, that we'll see a Pro... Well, they said that we'd see an advanced and a cheaper model due out this summer. I don't know if that's the case. I'm looking forward to any announcements from Nintendo. I know there's direct rumors going on right now that a direct is upcoming. But it's going to take a lot for me to consider swapping to new hardware. Right now, the Switch does everything that I've wanted it to do, and it's still kicking. So, unless Nintendo does something extremely groundbreaking, I'm fine with my current Switch, and I think many people will be as well. But if you want more powerful hardware or a smaller form factor Switch, then those may be on the way soon. Only time will tell. Now, next up, I want to talk about Nintendo possibly developing a gaming phone. Now, this I don't take seriously at all. I thought it was just funny to throw in, and I figured if we were talking about new Nintendo Switch hardware, we would talk about another form of hardware. And that is the possibility of a Nintendo Switch gaming phone. Now, I believe that there were like rumors of this way back in like the Wii days. I remember when the Wii was out and seeing like Wii phones, and even like Wii U as well, seeing like Wii U phones and how they could connect with the Wii U. I don't think I mean, obviously, if Nintendo were, and like I said, I don't believe this whatsoever. I don't think Nintendo is going to release a phone. I don't think they are. If not a phone, then maybe like just release a Switch Mini. I can't think of any other mobile portable hardware that Nintendo could release other than a Switch Mini. I think Nintendo's games do fine enough on current iOS and Android devices that I don't think there's a need for them to release their own hardware just to play their own games. I can't imagine that. I mean, a lot of their games don't take much optimization or power or insight to make, and I think they perform well enough on my iPhone and many Android phones that there's no need for this. But if Nintendo were to develop a gaming phone, it wouldn't be the first time. We have like the Razer phone. I know there's an ROG phone out there. I know I know Huawei, I think, released some sort of phone where you could slide it into a controller type thing. So this wouldn't be the first gaming phone out on the market, but I do think having Nintendo get into the smartphone business, especially when, like, right now the phone market is kind of declining. It's not really doing all that well, and there's already competition out there when it comes to gaming phones. And I think Nintendo is much better off with the software on phones than the hardware. I mean, making mobile games and having available on all these other phones, I think works. And I think Nintendo's racking in a lot of cash from that. I think that their games do really well. Personally, I don't play them. I grow out of them. The only mobile game I play is Pokemon Go. But if they were to release a Nintendo phone, obviously it would have more of a focus on their first party games, you know, Super Mario Run, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, Dragalia Lost, so on and so forth. But it would also be interesting if I don't know if they would offer emulation, like offer NES, SNES, Game Boy games to be emulated in a legal way on the phone. But I don't know. I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily hypocritical to release a phone when you have the Switch on the shelves. I personally, like I said, Pokemon Go is the only mobile game I play. I've tried getting into Clash of Clans. I used to play a little bit of Clash Royale. Sometimes like I'll play Hearthstone on my phone once in a blue moon. I used to play a lot of Pokemon Duel. I used to play some I already mentioned Clash of Clans and all that, but like I just don't do a lot of mobile gaming on my phone. And if I'm going to play a game on the go, I'd much rather just brain my Switch. I think I said that last week when we were talking about Google Stadia and how it could stream to tablets and mobile phones. I'd rather just brain my Switch. There's really no mobile game that I think can compete with braining an actual handheld console. And obviously, I think in terms of it being a smartphone, obviously this wouldn't be like a high-end smartphone. I think this would probably be more of a middle-of-the-road, not necessarily a huge flagship from Apple. It'd be kind of like a middle-of-the-road kind of thing. And I'm sure it'd focus more so on its game development and its software rather than it being hardware. But it's an interesting read. It's interesting to think about. I don't think there's really room for a Nintendo phone. I don't think it would do well. I have an iPhone. I have the XS, and I would not swap from iOS for any Android device. Obviously, this Nintendo phone would run some sort of Android OS, similar to how Switch runs Android OS, or at least a version of it or something of the sort. I personally would not switch at all. maybe I'd buy it to see what it looks like, to see what it feels like, to see what it does. But then I'd return it or something like that. Like I can't see myself actually using a Nintendo phone, no matter how good the development is for games, no matter how good the software is. But it is also kind of an interesting thing to think about because Nintendo has the Nintendo Switch. I don't think mobile gaming and handheld gaming would... I mean, a lot of people conveniently have their phones on them at all times and play games on that. But the Switch still seems to do so well. And I think Nintendo might see like an opening in that. I think they see an opportunity to... Because Nintendo's always kind of been king of the handheld gaming. I think they might see a way to maybe tap into the mobile gaming market, and I don't know. Maybe they legitimately see a way to get into the smartphone market and get into that mobile gaming. If they can do it with Switch and make great handheld games for that, they can probably do something with a phone. But like I said, how many people... Well, I guess there are people buying the Razer phone. Apart from... I mean, there are people that buy into gaming phones, but I just don't know why you would necessarily buy a Nintendo phone when there's much... I personally don't buy into the gaming phone gimmick. I'll say that right here, right now. But, like, I guess it's the same thing with the Switch. Like, why buy Switch when you can buy PS4? Why buy a Nintendo phone when you can buy a Razer phone? The same discussion could be had if this ends up coming to fruition. I don't think it will. I think it's just a little rumor. I think it's a little April Fool's joke. I don't believe it. I personally... I think it's such a odd, random decision. I think Nintendo does well enough with their hardware for consoles that I can't see them tapping into the phone market with actual hardware. So that's that. I don't believe it, but you make of it what you want. But with that said, I think that's all that we have this week. I know there wasn't a lot to talk about, but I was really interested and fascinated by new Nintendo Switch hardware. And I think this is the first time we got to talk about it on this show. So I figured now is a great time to do so. Of course, if you guys ended up enjoying, don't forget to drop a like and a comment, as that would be greatly appreciated. If you want to support the show, you can find it on Patreon, link it down below. If you want to follow on Twitter for updates and more, guess what? There's a link in the description down below. But above all else, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.